Hello, I'm Miranda Kahn.
And I'm John Bachman. Coming up right now on Newsmax Now, the former head of the CIA heads to federal court where he faces charges of leaking classified documents to his mistress. Will the man who turned the tide of the Iraq War really head to prison?
Dealing with the IRS is always a taxing affair, especially if you were one of 8 million Americans who they hung up on this tax season. The new controversy and the blame game was the reason the budget cuts or employee bonuses.
And action star Steven Seagal's bromance with Russian President Vladimir Putin reaches new heights. Is the actor's next role foreign diplomat? All that and much more coming up.
It's noon Eastern time, but no matter where you are, it's now time for Newsmax Now. And we begin now with Newsmax TV's continuing coverage on a U.S. counterterror operation that killed 2 innocent hostages.
Yeah, Miranda, one of those hostage in American, the other one in Italian. The White House says in addition to those hostages, 2 Americans, both al-Qaeda operatives, also died during that same operation. One of them, one of the hostages, Warren Weinstein, was an American citizen. The other hostage was Italian. We have that for you shortly. President Obama spoke just a few moments ago, expressed his condolences to both families.
I cannot begin to imagine the anguish that the Weinstein and Laporto families are enduring today. I realize that there are no words that can ever equal their loss.
That was Giovanni Laporto, the second man who was killed, the Italian. The president also says U.S. intelligence was targeting a terrorist compound, and they had no indication that the hostages were there as well. Both those American members of al-Qaeda were killed during that same drone strike.
It's just a matter of time before the former head of the CIA will learn his fate. Retired Army General David Petraeus is pleading guilty today in a federal courtroom. Petraeus admits to leaking secrets to his mistress, who was writing his biography. As part of the plea agreement, he's expected to get 2 years of probation and a $40,000 fine.
And Loretta Lynch is getting closer to taking over as the nation's first female African-American Attorney General. The Senate is debating her nomination today. The path to a vote on Loretta Lynch's nomination was cleared last night when the Senate unanimously passed that human trafficking bill after much debate. Republicans had wanted to get that bill done before the vote on Lynch. The final vote is expected sometime this afternoon.
So far, voters appear to like what they're seeing from one GOP presidential candidate. Right now, Marco Rubio takes the top spot with 15% of Republicans backing him in this new Quinnipiac poll. Of all the GOP contenders, he also fares the best against Hillary Clinton. They're in a statistical dead heat. Things, though, off to a cool start, though, for Carly Fiorina. The former head of HP snagged just 1%. Fiorina has not officially launched a campaign yet, but the Wall Street Journal says she'll announce her run on May 4th.
Well, today, investigators are trying to figure out why 3 people aboard a flight from Chicago to Connecticut passed out. The SkyWest jet, operating as a United Express flight, made an emergency landing early today in Buffalo, or yesterday afternoon. 75 passengers were on board, including a nurse who was called for help when one woman lost consciousness.
By the time I saw her, she was pretty lethargic. Her color looked awful. So, I asked for some oxygen for her, and once she got the oxygen, she was looking a lot better. Responsive, and then all of a sudden the woman behind her passed out.
Well, after that second woman passed out, the nurse told the flight crew it was time to get that plane on the ground. At least 17 people had to be checked out by paramedics. SkyWest says there's no sign that the plane lost pressure or experienced any other problems.
Sunny days are here again, at least for baseball's home run king. A federal appeals court in San Francisco just overturned Barry Bonds' conviction. A court ruled against Bonds back in 2003 for an answer that he gave the grand jury. The court now says prosecutors didn't have enough evidence to prove that answer was material to their investigation. In other sports news, Tim Tebow makes a return to the NFL. He's signed a not-so-great deal with the Philadelphia Eagles, but don't feel too bad for him. He's still getting more than $600,000 a year. Tebow last played with the New York Jets 3 years ago. He also recently made it on Newsmax's list of the top 100 most influential Christians.
And joining us now is our Newsmax colleague and host of the soon-to-be hit show, Newsmax Prime.
I appreciate that optimism, that hit show.
We're all counting on
That's
you,
right.
JD. We wanted to have you on today because there is this discussion going on on Capitol Hill, in the White House, and back and forth, and also on the campaign trail about this Trans-Pacific partnership and these trade deals can be maybe perhaps a bit esoteric for the average citizen out there. But I wanted to get your take on what's playing out right now, because you got the president and Hillary Clinton supporting these trade deals, but Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, even some folks on the right not too sure about what's going on here.
And really, you mentioned folks on the right, and John, that's where we need to watch the space, because on America's Forum earlier this week, political consultant, political analyst Dick Morris said, take a look at the legislation. The Trans-Pacific Partnership does for the United States and countries around the Pacific Rim essentially what the European Union deal did to national sovereignty. The free flow of migrants, people not adhering to immigration law for any of the nations. It's a way to short circuit and really take off the table the whole notion of increased illegal immigration. Well, Dick Morris said, you got to watch it there. On the other side, there's trade, and a whole lot of moderate Democrats and Republicans say you got to have free trade, and you got to trade with China primarily. That's Paul Ryan's concern.
Well, let's listen to how the president is proposing this. We have a soundbite from him. Let's play that.
The status quo is not working for us. You think about how many Japanese cars are being driven here in the United States. You go to Tokyo, there's not an American car in sight. Why would we want to keep that status quo as opposed to have a new deal in which Japan has to open up its market so that Chrysler, Ford, and GM can start competing in those markets?
Well, it sounds like a reasonable proposal, right?
Oh, it sure does. But here is the trick politically and in terms of salesmanship. See the shiny object? See the shiny object right here? I'm going to focus on this. And meantime, there's the back door with immigration, which is what is going to be very interesting to see in the House of Representatives. Now, the Fast Track Authority that is being referenced here in the article on our parent website, Newsmax.com, that was the vote yesterday in the Senate Finance Committee. On the Senate side, the Finance Committee has jurisdiction. On the House side today, my old committee, the Ways and Means Committee, chaired by Paul Ryan, there will be a fast-track vote. And there's another question about this, gang, that we have to keep in mind. The same president who, by many standards, has usurped authority, talking about executive action, to hand over fast-track authority to this president on this issue, has a lot of people saying, hang on a second. So get ready. You may see a situation where you have the left and elements of the right unite, but it'll be up to people calling their member of Congress and their two senators to say, hold on a second on this whole trade issue and the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
So your advice, read up, folks, and call your congressman or your senator, because this is going to have huge implications.
Yes, it's going to have, as Dick Morris told us, it is going to have huge implications for immigration over and above trade. And there's a separate trade question. Do you reward China when you go into a situation where the Chinese are stealing hand over fist our technology and launching cyber attacks against our Pentagon on a daily basis?
All right, and while we have you here, we wanted to get your take also, too, on this report coming out of the House Ways and Means Committee about the IRS and these bonuses. A lot of folks got hung up on, could not get very critical information about their taxes this year. And meanwhile, we find out that a lot of that money that was supposed to go to customer service was diverted to people's pocketbooks.
Yeah, the deal is John Koskinen, now as the commissioner of the IRS, has come in. I don't believe there's been a more partisan IRS head in a long time. And I don't want to get ad hominem, but his reptilian-like approach to say, I need more money, more money, more money, when we know that $60 million were diverted to employee bonuses, $20 million went to union activities.
Strange.
It gets very curious indeed. There was money there that could have been allocated not for bonuses for a department that is deficient, to say the least, in terms of overall performance to the American people. You could have used that $60 million to get answers to the American people. We have a juxtaposition. Bureaucrats not really being public servants as they should be.
All right.
JD, thanks so much for joining us. A long simmering feud between two senators heats up. More on that next.